Welcome to Headstones and Microphones, where we use AI to step into the past through a researched, first-person simulation of history's most interesting people. I am your host, Calvin. While we've added some creative storytelling, our goal is to inspire your own study of these fascinating lives. Now, let's meet our guest. I am absolutely thrilled today. We are sitting down with the man who essentially defined the 1980s for an entire generation. For those who may somehow not know who you are you?
Well, hello, Calvin. My name is John Hughes. Most people know me as a filmmaker and a writer, the guy who spent a lot of time thinking about what it's like to be a teenager, even long after I'd grown up myself.
You certainly did. Let's take it back to the beginning. When and where were you born?
I was born on February 18th, 1950 in Lansing, Michigan.
And what was your given name at birth?
It was John Wilden Hughes Jr.
Is there a story behind your birth name?
Not a very cinematic one, I'm afraid. I was named after my father. My middle name, Wilden, was a family name from my mother's side. Growing up as a junior always makes you feel like you have big shoes to fill, or perhaps just a legacy to start carving out for yourself.
What was your hometown like growing up?
Lansing was a very classic Midwestern environment, but the big shift happened when we moved to the Chicago suburbs, specifically Northbrook, when I was about 12. That's the world people see in my movies. It was quiet, green, and full of those big brick high schools that felt like the center of the universe.
What was your family life like?
It was fairly quiet. My father was in sales and my mother volunteered at charity shops. I had 3 sisters, so I was the only boy. I think being the only son in a house full of women gave me a different perspective on communication and emotion than some of my peers had.
What kind of kid were you?
I was a bit of a loner, honestly. I wasn't the captain of the football team. I was the kid in the back of the room observing everything. I spent a lot of time in my own head, imagining stories and listening to music. I was very much an outsider looking in.
What were your biggest fears growing up?
I think my biggest fear was just being ordinary. Or worse, being ignored. I was terrified of falling into a life where I didn't get to express the things I saw. The fear of the boring life is a powerful motivator.
What did you dream of becoming as a child?
I actually wanted to be a painter or an artist. I loved the idea of creating something from a blank canvas. The movies came much later, but the desire to create a world from scratch was always there.
What were some of your favorite activities in school?
I loved anything to do with the arts and, of course, music. I wasn't much for organized sports, but I could spend hours in a record store. I also enjoyed writing for the school paper. That's where I started to realize I could make people laugh with words.
What was your first job?
I worked as a copywriter for an advertising agency in Chicago. I was writing ads for things like Edge shaving cream and Virginia Slims. It was a great lesson in how to tell a story very quickly and how to grab someone's attention in 30 seconds.
Was there a moment where you realized you were different from everyone else?
I think it was when I realized I remembered exactly what it felt like to be 16. Most adults seem to get a sort of emotional amnesia once they hit 25. They forget the heartbreak and the sheer intensity of high school. I realized I could still feel those things clearly, and that gave me a voice others didn't have.
What's a decision that changed everything for you, but felt small at the time?
Sending a story into National Lampoon magazine. I was just an ad guy with some funny ideas. I sent a story called Vacation 58, which was based on my own family trips. It felt like a why not moment, but it ended up becoming the movie National Lampoon's Vacation.
Talk about a ripple effect. What was your biggest break?
Writing National Lampoon's Vacation was huge, but getting the chance to direct 16 Candles was the real turning point. It was the first time I got to put my specific vision of youth on the screen exactly how I saw it.
What were your biggest struggles before success?
Just the grind of the ad world, trying to be creative on a deadline for products I didn't care about while trying to write my own scripts at night. It's exhausting to have 2 lives, the one that pays the bills and the one that feeds your soul.
Did you ever consider quitting?
I don't think I could have quit writing if I tried. It's like breathing. I might have quit the industry or the business part of it, which I eventually did later in life, but I never stopped telling stories.
Were there any specific daily habits or routines that you feel are essential to your success?
I was a night owl. I would write through the night when the world was quiet. I also relied heavily on music. I couldn't write a scene until I found the right song for it. The music told me what the characters were feeling.
What job would you have had if fame never happened?
I probably would have stayed in advertising or perhaps tried to be a novelist, something where I could work in a room by myself and just create.
What was your life like before fame?
It was very suburban dad. I had my wife, Nancy, who was my high school sweetheart, by the way, and our boys. We lived a very normal life in Illinois. I was just a guy commuting to the city.
How did relationships change after success?
It makes things complicated. Suddenly everyone wants something from you. That's why I stayed in Chicago instead of moving to Hollywood. I wanted to keep my real friends and my family away from the industry noise.
Did fame bring happiness?
It brought the freedom to tell my stories, which made me very happy. But the fame part, the being recognized, that wasn't for me. I was always much happier behind the camera than in front of it.
What was the downside of becoming famous?
Losing your privacy and having people analyze your every move. I found the Hollywood machine to be quite cold. They want you to repeat the same trick over and over.
What misconceptions did people have about you?
People thought I was this quote-unquote teen whisperer who hung out with kids all day. In reality, I was a middle-aged guy who just happened to remember what it felt like to be young. I was much more serious and private than people expected.
What's something people misunderstood about your life?
Some people thought I stopped caring about movies when I walked away in the 90s. I didn't stop caring. I just wanted to go home. I wanted to raise my kids and live a life that wasn't dictated by box office numbers.
Did fame and fortune change your life?
It allowed me to provide for my family in ways I never imagined, but it didn't change who I was at my core. I was still the same guy who loved the Beatles and a good joke.
Who had the biggest influence on your life?
My wife, Nancy. We were together since we were kids. She was my rock, my first reader, and the person who kept me grounded when everything else was spinning out of control.
What was life like in your final years?
It was peaceful. I was back in Illinois, farming, writing under various names, and spending time with my grandchildren. I was out of the spotlight and exactly where I wanted to be.
What were you working on in your career before you passed away?
I never stopped writing. I had stacks of scripts and stories that I wrote just for myself. I was enjoying the process of creation without the pressure of production.
When and where did you pass away?
I passed away on August 6, 2009, in New York City.
What happened?
I was simply taking a walk during a visit to see my family when I suffered a sudden heart attack. It was very quick.
What's a random fact about you most people have never heard?
I wrote the entire script for The Breakfast Club in just 2 days. When the inspiration hit, it hit hard.
What was your most unique habit?
I would buy stacks of notebooks and fill them with snippets of dialogue I overheard in malls or restaurants. I was a professional eavesdropper.
What was your favorite food?
I was a big fan of simple Chicago-style comfort food. A good deep dish pizza or Chicago dog, no ketchup of course.
What was your favorite book?
I always had a deep appreciation for the works of Mark Twain. He understood the American spirit and humor better than anyone.
Did you have any known rivalries?
Not really rivalries, but I certainly had my creative differences with the studios. I didn't like being told how to end my stories.
What's your funniest behind-the-scenes moment?
On the set of Ferris Bueller, Ben Stein, who played the economics teacher, wasn't supposed to give a full lecture. I just told him to talk about something he knew, and he went on this incredibly boring, improvised rant about supply-side economics. The look of boredom on the students' faces was 100% real.
What was the most outlandish purchase you made?
I wasn't a big spender on flashy things, but I did have a massive, massive collection of vinyl records. Thousands of them. To me, that was true wealth.
What advice would you give people chasing success?
Write what you know and don't let the adults tell you that your feelings don't matter just because you're young. Your heart is just as big at 16 as it is at 60.
John, this has been an absolute dream. Before we sign off, do you have any closing remarks or stories you'd like to share with our listeners?
Just that I hope people keep watching movies that make them feel less alone. We're all a little bit of a brain, an athlete, a basket case, a princess, and a criminal. Embrace all those parts of yourself. Thank you so much for having me, Calvin. It's been a blast to talk shop again.
Thank you, John.
From 16 Candles to Home Alone, you gave us so much. And that wraps up another conversation from Beyond the Grave. Thanks for joining us on the Headstones and Microphones podcast. Remember, legends may die, but their stories never do. Please help spread the word by sharing and following the pod.